If there is a hell designed for mothers, it is the moment you realize the child you raised to be good has chosen to be cruel. That is where my story begins. Not with death, but with betrayal wearing my son's face. My name is Margaret Hayes, and I have lived long enough to bury my parents, my husband, and most of my friends. But nothing hurt the way it did the day I watched my son walk away from the woman who was dying to love him. Evelyn, my daughter-in-law, had always been gentle. Even after her body began to betray her, cells turning against her, strength dissolving like sugar in water, she held on to grace as if it were the last thing she could control. Some people rage when sickness takes root. Evelyn softened. She became light where there should have been fear. I spent almost every day at the hospital with her. She was thin, frighteningly thin, her bones pressed against her skin like she was slowly drifting out of this world, and the only thing anchoring her was the hope that my son would walk through that door. "Has Andrew eaten?" she asked one afternoon, her voice a fragile thread. Always thinking of him, even now. I swallowed a lie. "Yes, sweetheart, he has." The truth was, I didn't know where my son was. I wanted to believe he was fighting insurance battles or picking up medication, something useful, something loving. But inside me, a quiet dread shifted, a dark shape moving in water. "You don't have to stay all day, Margaret," she whispered, her fingers cold in my hand. "I know this is exhausting." I smiled because she needed it. "Being here with you is the easiest part of my day." She looked toward the door, hope flickering, weak but persistent. "Do you think he'll come tonight?" Another lie, another cut. "He'll come soon." She closed her eyes with relief, and that tiny piece of peace I gave her became the only comfort I could offer. The truth would have broken her. The truth was already breaking me. Later that evening, I stepped outside to breathe. The sky smelled like rain, and the pavement still glistened from an earlier drizzle. And then I saw him, my son, laughing. Not a nervous laugh or a tired laugh, the kind that had been so rare these past months. No, this was a laugh that belonged to a man without a dying wife, a man unburdened, and he wasn't alone. A young woman, bright and charming and painfully alive, leaned into him. Her hand brushed his arm with a familiarity that rooted me to the spot. I gripped the railing so hard my fingers went numb. The world tilted, and for a moment I truly believed I might collapse, that I should collapse. He didn't see me. He didn't see anything but her. I wanted to scream his name. I wanted to drag him across the street. I wanted to beg him to remember the vows he made to a woman who was praying for one more tomorrow. Instead, I turned away because Evelyn was waiting for me upstairs, and she deserved better than the truth that was tearing me apart. When I returned to her bedside, she opened her eyes, searching the doorway. "Still here?" she murmured. "Always." Her gaze drifted again to that empty space her heart still believed he would fill. "Is he coming?" This time, the lie nearly choked me. "He'll come soon." She nodded, comforted by a hope I no longer had the strength to hold for her. That night, when she finally slept, I let myself cry, silent, shaking, breaking in a way I didn't know a body could break. Not just for Evelyn, but for the realization that the child I raised with tenderness had grown into a man capable of this cruelty. And yet, I had no idea the worst was still ahead. I expected guilt in his eyes. Instead, I found casual comfort. That was the first sign something inside my son had already broken. The next morning, Andrew stood in the kitchen pouring coffee like he was getting ready for work, not abandoning his dying wife. His shirt was neatly pressed, his eyes clear. He looked rested. I, on the other hand, felt as though the night had hollowed me out. "Morning," he said lightly. Something inside me snapped, not loudly, but with the quiet finality of a thread pulled too tight. "Where were you yesterday?" He blinked, startled by my tone. "I told you I got busy." I studied him, searching for the little boy who used to apologize to the garden worms when he accidentally stepped on them. But the boy was gone. What stood before me was a man I barely recognized. "Busy doing what?" My voice was cold enough to frost glass. He hesitated. A flicker, guilt or fear, crossed his eyes. "You were with her," I said. The coffee mug froze halfway to his mouth. "What?" "You heard me, Andrew." His jaw tightened. "Mom, don't insult me with lies." He slammed the mug down too hard, coffee sloshing over the rim. "You're overreacting." "I saw you," I said, quietly, "across the street, laughing with a woman who is not your wife." His shoulders fell. Silence pressed between us like an unwelcome witness. "How could you?" I whispered. He dragged a hand through his hair, pacing, avoiding my eyes. "Mom, I can't sit there every day, watching her fade away. It's killing me." "And so you found someone else to hide in?" The words came out sharp, sharper than I intended, but not sharper than he deserved. He flinched. "Good, let it sting." "She makes me feel alive," he murmured. "Lila understands me." For a moment, the world stilled, as if even the air was horrified. "That girl," I said softly, dangerously, "knows the version of you who runs. Evelyn knows the version of you who stays." His face twisted. "Don't call me a coward." "Then don't behave like one." He looked at me with rage and shame mixed into something uglier. "You don't know what it's like to watch someone you love suffer." I stepped closer. I sat beside your father as he took his final breath. I held Evelyn's mother's hand when she died. Don't you dare lecture me about suffering. We stood inches apart. 30 years of love stretched thin, too thin. "You need to end it," I said. He swallowed hard. I can't." And that was when the truth landed with brutal clarity. This wasn't a fleeting mistake. This was a choice he was still making. "If you don't come to the hospital today, you will regret it for the rest of your life." He didn't answer. I didn't wait. When I walked into Evelyn's room, her face looked even more fragile, translucent, as if light could pass straight through her. But when she saw me, she smiled, a smile fragile enough to break a heart. "Is he coming?" she whispered. I had to swallow twice before I could form words. "He'll try." I hated myself how easily the lie came. She nodded, relieved. "Good." She reached for my hand. "You know, you've been more of a mother to me than my own," she said softly. My throat tightened. "You've always been family." Her eyes glistened. "I want to tell you something." I sat down. "I don't want Andrew to feel guilty when—" She paused. "When the time comes." The words cut me through like a blade. "What do you mean?" She looked down, eyelashes trembling. "I'm not getting better. I can feel it." Tears blurred my vision. "And I know he's been distant." My breath hitched. She didn't know the whole truth, but she felt the drift. "He's scared," she whispered. "Please don't blame him." Her grace was unbearable. "Evelyn, sweetheart." She squeezed my hand weakly. "I'd rather die loving him than die angry." The simplicity of her devotion pierced me so deeply I could barely breathe. Later, she drifted to sleep, and I stepped into the hallway. My phone buzzed. A text from Andrew. "I'll try to come, not sure when." Not sure when. I wanted to scream. Instead, I wiped my tears and returned to her bedside. She needed presence, not pain. Later that hour, evening settled over the hospital like a blanket of quiet dread. Evelyn awoke, eyes red and swollen from silent tears. "Margaret, can I ask you something? Anything." Her voice cracked. "Does he still love me?" The question split something open inside me, a raw maternal wound. "Oh, sweetheart," I said, pulling her into my arms. "He loves you more than he knows how to handle it." Her lip trembled. She buried her face into the pillow, suppressing a soft sob. I stroked her hair. "Fear makes people run from the things they can't bear to lose." She nodded slowly, tears slipping quietly across her cheek. My heart shattered for the 100th time that week. That night, when I returned home, the house felt colder than usual, like grief had seeped into the walls. I prayed for strength, for guidance, for the courage to do what must come next, because I finally understood the truth I had been avoiding. My son wasn't merely lost, he was choosing the path that would destroy him, and if I didn't intervene, Evelyn would die believing she wasn't enough. I couldn't let that be her last thought, not while I had breath left in my body. There comes a moment when anger stops burning and starts sharpening. That was the kind of resolve I woke with the next day, cold, clear, and unforgiving. Evelyn slept when I left the hospital that morning. Her breath was thin and quiet, like a candle fighting a draft. I kissed her forehead, whispering that I'd return soon. Her skin was cold, too cold. I didn't go home. My feet moved on their own, drawn toward the one place I dreaded most, the cafe on Birch Street, the place where my son forgot he had a dying wife. My heart pounded as I approached, every step fueled by a mixture of grief and fury. The sky hung low and gray, the kind of weather that feels like a warning. Then I saw them. Through the window, Andrew sat across from Lila, laughing softly, shoulders relaxed, eyes gentle, the kind of eyes Evelyn hadn't seen in months. Her giggle floated through the glass, light and bright. His smile followed, warm, easy, the smile of a man who felt free. A sound left me, half gasp, half break. My hand flew to my mouth as tears blurred my vision. How could he? How could he just sit there when Evelyn was fading? After a full minute of crushing grief, something inside me hardened. Not rage, something quieter, sharper. A mother's final line. I pushed open the cafe door. The bell chimed cheerfully, mocking the storm inside my chest. Andrew looked up, his face drained of color. "Mom." "Don't," I said, not one word. Lila blinked, confused. "Is everything all right?" I stared at her with eyes burning from unshed tears. "Do you truly want that answer?" Her mouth closed. Good. I turned to my son, the child I raised, the boy who once feared disappointing me, the man who no longer seemed to fear anything at all. "You know where I've been this morning," I said quietly. "At the hospital, with your wife." He swallowed. "Meanwhile, where are you?" My voice quivered, but I didn't care. "Here, laughing, as if your world isn't crumbling." He opened his mouth, but I lifted a hand. "No, you don't get to speak yet." The cafe fell silent. People tried not to stare, but they did anyway. "She asks for you," I said quietly. "Every day she asks for you. She watches the door waiting for you. She tries to hide her disappointment because she doesn't want to make you feel guilty." His face twisted with shame, but I kept going. "She thinks she is the burden." My voice cracked. "She thinks she is the problem." Lila inhaled sharply. Andrew's head dropped. "How dare you?" I whispered. "How dare you let her believe that?" "Mom," his voice broke.
I can't handle seeing her like that. Every time I walk into that room, I feel like I'm drowning. And so you run to this. I gestured toward Lila. This is your life raft? He flinched. Good. She makes me feel alive, he muttered. And Evelyn makes you feel guilty because she reminds you of the vows you're breaking. Lila looked down, shame coloring her cheeks. Andrew, I didn't know it was like that. Still, I didn't spare her more than a glance. If you walk out of here with her, I said softly, you will carve regret so deep into your soul that not even time will dull it. He let out a shuddered breath. Tears gathered at the corners of his eyes. I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm asking you to be present, to be the man she believes you are. Silence. Then Lila whispered, voice trembling, "Go to your wife. This isn't right." Andrew closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, I saw something break, and something else begin to mend. "Come," I said gently. "Now." He nodded. For the first time in months, he chose correctly. We walked outside into rain that had finally begun falling, cold, relentless, almost cleansing. Andrew's shoulders shook as we walked, tears mixed with the rain on his face. Good. Feel it. Let the guilt take root. But beneath everything, anger, disappointment, grief, another feeling flickered inside me. Hope. Fragile, trembling hope. He was coming back to her. And Evelyn, sweet, forgiving Evelyn, would love him with whatever breath she had left, even if he didn't deserve it, even if it broke her. I knew that as clearly as I knew the beating of my own heart. What none of us knew, not yet, was that fate had already begun counting down Evelyn's final hours, and nothing could stop what was coming.
If grief has a sound, it is the way a grown man tries not to cry. That was all I heard on the drive back, my son swallowing the wreckage of his own choices. Andrew sat hunched in the passenger seat, wiping his face with shaking hands, but the tears kept coming. Watching him was like watching a house burn down while knowing he had struck the match himself. And yet, he was still my child. And Evelyn, dear Evelyn, was the heart he never learned how to hold without breaking. The hospital rose in front of us, its windows reflecting the thunderclouds gathering above, a fitting sky for the storm my son had created. Inside the corridor, the smell of antiseptic hit us like a cold truth. Machines hummed, shoes clicked. Life continued around us, indifferent to the fact that one was slipping away in room 407. Andrew hesitated at Evelyn's door, his hand trembling above the handle. "Go," I whispered. "She needs you more than I do." He nodded and pushed the door open. Evelyn turned her head weakly, expecting me, as always, but when she saw him, something in her face blossomed. A small, fragile sunrise through exhaustion. "Andrew," she breathed. Her voice was so frail it nearly broke me. "I'm here," he whispered, the words cracking. Just 2 words, but to her, they were salvation. She lifted a trembling hand. When he took it, he pressed it to her forehead, shoulders shaking, crying like a child who just realized too late where home had always been. "I'm sorry," he choked. "I should have been here. I should have stayed with you." Her eyes softened with a love so undeserved it stung. "You're here now," she whispered. "That's what matters." But it wasn't enough for me. Not after what I'd seen, not after all the nights she lay awake waiting for him. I stepped back, watching the woman my son had betrayed comfort him as if she was the one responsible for his pain. It was a cruelty I could barely swallow. I slipped into the hallway, pretending I needed water. The truth,
I needed air before the grief inside me cracked open. A nurse passed, touching my arm gently. "She adores you," she said. "Both of you. When your son walks in, it's like she forgets she's sick." Her words were soft, but they cut, because they were true. When I returned, Andrew was sitting on her bed, holding her hand with both of his forehead pressed to her fingers. He looked at me with eyes begging for forgiveness I couldn't give. Not yet. Evelyn turned between us, smiling with a peace I didn't understand. "I'm glad you're both here," she whispered. "It feels safe." But her breaths were changing, shallower, spaced too far apart. Her ribs lifted like they were made of glass. Andrew panicked. "Do you need a nurse? Evelyn, please." "No," she breathed. "Just stay." Hours passed like that, the kind of hours that bruise the soul. At one point, Evelyn opened her eyes again, gazing at Andrew with a depth I will never forget. "If I fall asleep," she whispered, "don't be afraid." His face crumpled. Don't." But she smiled, small, soft, fearless. "I'm not afraid." Then she turned to me, her eyes shining with a tenderness that pierced straight through me. "I'm glad you're my family," she said. "Thank you for loving me." My throat closed. "You brought more love into this family than you know." Her smile faded as her eyelids grew heavy. Her breathing slowed and slowed. Andrew held her hand like he could anchor her to this world by sheer force of regret. "Evelyn," he whispered desperately. She opened her eyes one last time. "I forgive you." The words were so soft, so full of grace, they might as well have been carried by angels. He broke, completely. A raw, guttural sob tore from him, one I pray never to hear again. Her chest rose once more, then gently fell, and didn't rise again. Andrew collapsed over her body, shaking so hard the bed trembled beneath him. "No, no, please, Evelyn, please." I wrapped my arms around him, both of us crying into the fading warmth of the woman who loved him more fiercely in death than he ever loved her in life. He kissed her forehead at last. "I'm sorry," he whispered into her hair. "I love you." Words she waited months to hear, words she deserved long before they came, and far too late to save her.
The world outside the hospital felt wrong, as if grief had tilted it off its axis. Maybe it was night, maybe it was just the shadow of what we'd lost. Either way, the darkness felt too thick to breathe through. Andrew walked beside me like a man made of ash, his shoulders curled inward, each step dragging, as if he were pulling the weight of his sins behind him. Under the streetlights, his face looked ghost pale, his eyes swollen and unfocused, like he was looking at the world through water. I wanted to reach for him, to pull him close. I also wanted to shout at him until the truth split him open. The contradiction clawed at my chest. When we got into the car, he didn't move, didn't blink, just sat there staring at the dashboard, his breath catching in small, uneven bursts. I couldn't stand the silence. "She loved you," I whispered. His jaw quivered, and his eyes squeezed shut as if the words pierced him. "I know," he whispered back, voice cracking like thin ice. "God, Mom, she loved me so much." His tears fell silently, tracking down his cheeks in shining lines. "And you loved her," I said. But he shook his head, slowly, painfully. "I don't know if I deserve to say that, not after what I did."
His voice sounded like it was being torn from his throat. I placed a hand on his shoulder. You made terrible choices, not sugarcoating truth that had already scarred us all. Choices that hurt her, choices that hurt you. He flinched. But you were with her at the end. You held her hand. You gave her peace. His breath stuttered, and he let out a soft, broken sound, half grief, half disbelief. She forgave me, he said, like he still couldn't understand it. How could she forgive me after everything? Because she loved you more deeply than her suffering. That undid him. His face twisted, raw and anguished, the kind of grief that strips a person down to nothing. I don't deserve it. I don't deserve anything she gave me. I don't deserve to say her name. He folded forward, burying his face in his hands as sobs ripped through him, violent, choking, desperate. The car filled with the sound of a man grieving not just his wife, but the man he wished he had been when she needed him most. I rubbed his back gently. We can't rewrite the past, I said softly, but we can choose what we do with the memory she left us with. Eventually, his sobs softened, leaving only trembling breaths that shuddered through the silence. Mom, he finally whispered, voice small and cracked. Yes, sweetheart? I don't know how to live with what I did. The honesty of it nearly shattered me. You live by making sure you never become that man again. He nodded, but his face crumpled with fresh pain. After a long silence, he whispered, I need to end things with her. My stomach tightened. Her. The shadow in the background, the betrayal with a pulse. He said the woman's name with disgust, like the syllables tasted bitter. I can't even look at her. I feel sick, physically sick. It all feels wrong. A strange mix of relief and sorrow washed over me. Relief that he finally saw the truth. Sorrow that it had taken the death of a saint to open his eyes. We'll face it, one step at a time. He nodded weakly. When we got home, he collapsed onto the couch, exhausted down to his bones. His grief sank into the cushions, heavy and suffocating. I covered him with a blanket and sat beside him. His eyes closed, but he didn't sleep. His lips kept moving, trembling around a name he would never get to say to her again. Evelyn. Over and over, as if the word itself could keep him alive, even after she was gone. And in the dim quiet of that living room, I whispered it too, because she deserved to be remembered, because she deserved more than what he gave her, because she deserved the world, a world she fought to stay in while the man she loved was slipping away from her.
Andrew didn't sleep that night. Not in the real way sleep restores you. He drifted, slipped under for seconds at a time, only to jolt awake again, gasping Evelyn's name like a man afraid the dark might steal the last pieces of her. I stayed beside him on the couch, my hand resting on his trembling shoulder. His skin felt warm from hours of crying. Every time he inhaled, it came jagged and shallow, as if his body wasn't sure grief still allowed him the right to breathe. Sometime before dawn, when the living room was painted in that faint, bruised blue light, he finally turned toward me. Mom, his voice was barely a thread. What if she hates me now? The question cleaved me open. He sounded so small, so lost, so young. Sweetheart, I said, smoothing his hair like I did after childhood nightmares. The last thing she did in this world was forgive you. He swallowed, a tremor moving down his throat.
But what if she regretted it? He whispered. What if she only said it because she was dying and didn't want to leave angry? My heart throbbed painfully. Evelyn wasn't a woman who lied to make people feel better. Her truth was her love. A single tear slipped down his cheek, then another. He didn't bother wiping them. She deserved better than me, he whispered. And for the first time since she passed, I didn't rescue him from the truth. She did. He flinched hard at that. But truth wounds before it heals, and he needed to bleed a little. But, I added gently, she believed in the man you can still become, the man she forgave, the man she loved enough to wait for. He pressed his fist against his forehead, as if trying to hold in the pieces of himself that were shattering. I want to be that man, he said, voice trembling. I need to be. I have to make this right. You start, I said quietly, by ending the affair. The air thinned instantly. He shut his eyes, shame creeping across his face like a shadow. She texted me yesterday, asking if I was coming over. My stomach twisted. Yesterday, while Evelyn was dying? His voice broke. Yes. He rubbed his temples, disgust scraping through every syllable. I can't even stand the thought of her face now. It makes me sick. Then this ends today. No more hiding, no more lies. He nodded, not with confidence, but with desperation. The phone call. Later that morning, he stepped onto the back porch with his phone, hands shaking so badly he nearly dropped it. I stood inside the kitchen, listening through the cracked door. He pressed call. The woman answered immediately, her voice sharp, impatient, a tone that made my skin tighten. What do you want? You just disappeared last night. Andrew exhaled shakily. It's over. Silence. Then a cold, incredulous laugh. You're funny. I'm serious. You're choosing her? That sick little... Andrew's voice dropped, low and sharp. I had never heard him sound like that. Don't you ever talk about her. The room went still. Even the refrigerator seemed to quiet. The woman scoffed. You told me you were done with her. You told me you felt trapped. You told me... I know what I said. His voice cracked, and I was wrong about all of it. He took a ragged breath. I should have been with my wife. I should never have left her side. I should never have done any of this. A long pause. Then, you're pathetic. And she hung up. Andrew didn't move first, just stared at the phone as if the screen might deliver another blow. Then his strength buckled. He sank down onto the porch steps, elbows on his knees, hands covering his face. I went to him, sat beside him, placed a hand on his back. It's done, he whispered, voice hollow. Yes, I said. It feels like pieces are falling off me. That's not the pieces, that's the weight. He leaned into me suddenly, head against my shoulder like he used to when his knees were scraped raw from playing too hard. Mom, I miss her so much. I held him. I know, I miss her too. Returning to the hospital. A few hours later, we returned to the hospital to gather Evelyn's belongings. Walking through those halls again felt wrong, too bright, too sterile, too indifferent to the fact that someone irreplaceable was no longer breathing within them. Her room, it felt like a tomb. The bed stripped, cold, the monitors gone, the hum that had kept time with her life now replaced with absolute stillness. Andrew froze in the doorway. Then he picked up her blanket. He held it like it was made of something sacred, brought it to his face, inhaled. It still smells like her. God, Evelyn. His shoulders caved inward, grief folding him in half. I packed her things slowly and carefully, a book she never finished, her lotion, her soft pink cardigan. I folded each item as if she might still need it somewhere. Andrew sat on the bed, holding that blanket to his chest, rocking slightly. When we finished, the room felt hollow, like grief echoed off the walls. Before we left, Andrew turned back. His voice cracked in half. "I'm sorry, Evelyn. I'm so sorry." It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, it was quiet, broken, truthful. And sometimes that kind of apology is the most devastating of all.